So there's nothing that's going to be in well water except a phosphate that we have to feed a phosphate to, and it's probably going to be very similar. It will cause a corrosion problem. So I don't see that.
Tim, you were on council, I think you brought a pipe up and showed us this bridge at the time. And talked about it at the time. Doug, do you remember the thing that lived in the
I do
pipe?
not, but we've seen a lot since then. So, any other questions about the proposed water project? Yes.
My concern is talking about clean water, lead in the pipes. Where are these leaded pipes? What houses are they going to? How safe is our water to be drinking?
Our current water now or the water to come?
Well, I talked about, they were saying that we have so many lead pipes.
Yes, and that's why they're being replaced.
Right, but how safe is the water coming through those lead pipes? That's kind of where I'm
Okay,
wondering.
and that's something, maybe I could reach out to you. Do you know, have an answer for that? Then,
Can I take a shot at this one?
yeah,
So the lead pipes that are in question and concern, 12 years ago, the city of Carlinville got very proactive. And when they could do side-by-side comparisons, and they were doing $400,000 grants at a time, that was actually 75-25, 75 forgiveness. The city was paying 25%. When lead and copper first started getting talked about, Mayor DeMuzio was very successful at securing funds for the city of Carlinville, several million for the water and sewer. A lot of that was put into being very proactive. So as far as the city side on the mains that were lead jointed, 4 and 6 inch mains, almost all of them were addressed 10, 12 years ago. So what we have now is what the plumbers would not let us touch as a municipality, what the city's in charge of. So everybody knows from the main to the curb stop or the meter pit is the responsibility for the city. From the meter pit or the curb stop in is what they considered the homeowners. The city was never allowed to touch anything on because it was taking plumbers' work away. And that got to be a huge deal because there was materials used that cities wouldn't have used, municipalities wouldn't have used. Them are the ones, a lot of them that need replaced now because they're galvanized or they're lead jointed. So the water that's coming through the city mains is totally different than what's going from a service. So it's mainly the services that we're looking at now. And a lot of the unknowns that got marked is because 10 or 12 years ago, there was a survey which kicked this whole lead and copper thing off that was turned in. And from the homeowners right here in town on that survey that was filled out is what got us a big jump on what. So if we had 700 unknowns, probably 600 of them surveys weren't turned in to the city. So we had no choice but to the EPA mark unknown because we didn't go investigate homeowners' internal plumbing. And the only way you can tell what's coming through the wall of the basement or into a house is if you look internally or dig it up outside. So that's where we're at today. When the companies that's doing the project for Carlinville, they're doing they pothole. And when they pothole, what they're doing is they're looking for galvanized, the service for every individual home. That's why we can only do so many. And if it's galvanized or if it's lead, that service gets replaced. And it gets replaced from the main, unless the city side is already PVC, then it'll get replaced from the curb stop to the house. So that's what the current program is. But just the lead and copper issue is more of a service line issue that is having to be dealt with.
So
And we do feed phosphates at the plant that inhibits the lead and the copper particles from flaking off and going to the consumer. That's required by the EPA.
What the city sends does say that if we don't have the correct water line from the curb stop to our house, it could be contaminated at that point.
Yes, ma'am, it could be. And that's what we're looking for. So if you notice a company out there that I believe they're already secured, it's MB Construction. If you see MB Construction anywhere around your house and you notice a little hole in about a 6-inch diameter show up, it's because that's what they're doing to pothole to find out what's going into your home. And if it's determined that what's going into your home needs replaced, they replace it. You can refuse to replace it, but if you do, you got to sign off on a waiver that shows you have possible contamination in your service, but you're refusing to let us replace it.
Tim, could you possibly speak to the lead and copper sampling in the city? Because I believe, like, in the city's records of that, because the city is required to do lead and copper sampling at so many addresses based on a number of factors. And then the results of that also indicate the safety of the drinking water. So, like, maybe touch on results from there.
So I can touch on results of that. There have been lead and copper hits in the city of Carlinville. I can tell you now that no lead and no copper has had a hit in the city of Carlinville that's been over the maximum contaminant level. None, zero. Traces of it have shown up in individual service lines. And in all them individual service lines that they've shown up in, they have been proven to be mostly on PVC supplied water mains from the city. So that tells that it's in the service where it's coming from. And that's why it's trying to be replaced. And another thing, everywhere that we know that there's lead and copper that still isn't replaced, the EPA is requiring us to do R40 or unknown. If we know for sure there's lead or a copper line or galvanized, or it's an unknown, we have 40 samples we have to take. And all 40 of them have to come from an unknown or a known lead service if we know that they exist. We just got done with that process. Well, I can't say we got done with that process. We're still waiting for 5 bottles out of 40.
Okay,
We have 5 bottles out of 40 that have been delivered to customers that we're waiting to get back.
Hey, Tim, could you,
Hold on. You have a question? You can
I
take.
have a question, yes. Probably a couple of months ago, somebody from MB did come to my house and check, and he said, you don't have lead pipes, you have copper, so there's no problem. According to what I'm hearing here, if it's lead or copper, it's supposed to be replaced. Am I misunderstanding that or what?
If it's lead or galvanized, it gets replaced.
Oh,
Copper,
okay, so what were they
copper's
talking about, the copper?
That's
There's,
just testing that's
it's-
required.
yeah.
of the
Oh,
city
okay.
to do on the line.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And then I do want to quickly touch on, you had a second part to your question of how do you know if your line is
if
lead
my
or
water
not?
is safe.
Uh,
Is there a place that we could take water from our faucet and have it tested to the city to know if it's safe?
You
I
could,
just wanna know if my water is
you
safe,
could independently work with the
that I
lab.
would pay for.
Yes,
Yeah, the
to
state
do,
does.
it's a 5-liter test. And a lab would give you instructions on how to do that. You could independently do that.
But if we're so concerned about the water, which I think a lot of people in here are very concerned on how safe their water is, couldn't the city supply somewhere where we can test it and the city pay for it? Because that's where a lot of the problem is. The city lines, city water. Am I wrong in that we have a lot of things that need to be replaced, but a concern for the safety of the water, the kids, our animals, everything? I mean, that's a concern to me.
In the city's defense, they are already testing it, is what Tim was saying. They're doing the state required testing.
Exactly, but I'm saying that I don't know if I have lead lines. I don't know. If there was a paper in January, I'm gonna tell you right now, I don't remember if I did one or not.
So,
So I just wanna know if my water in my neighborhood is safe.
I can direct you to, again, the city's website where the lead service line inventory is posted. Every single address is listed in there with service lines identified. Now, some are still marked as unknown because we don't have information to identify them. But you can refer to the lead service line inventory to look up your address.
If in case it is unknown, then will the city pay to have it tested?
That is not something that, yes.
I think what you're trying to find out, they test the water in the main lines, but they
Yeah.
don't test individual houses.
Exactly.
So you don't know,
I
the
don't know
water
if
in
I
the
have
main lines might
a
be fine, but how do you find out that the water actually going to your house?
Right,
Isn't.
or if I have a lead,
Yeah, because it's,
I kind of feel like I'm going in a circle,
yeah.
big circle.
If you have before.
I don't
Does anybody, before, did anybody have any response to that from what you're currently, before we move forward?
I don't think that the city I mean, it's your personal line, it's your personal, this program to replace the line is not a factor of whether the city's water is safe. It is to try to eliminate any potential lines that are in the community to remove them, to take
You
that
said the city,
potential.
if the city water is safe,
The city, we test the city water, we put out a
I
CCR, which is
understand the
reported
city
of the
water, but
water.
I'm talking about, there's a lot of houses.
I understand that, and that's your personal line that could be doing it. It's not the city's service line, it's your personal line. Now, part of this program that you're not understanding is the state is giving money basically to the communities to replace private lines. So they're trying to bear that cost for you as a homeowner in the city to hopefully to fix that problem for you as an individual. The problem is not in the city water.
I know, I'm so blessed with taxes.
Again, you're paying taxes to pay for all the services you receive, but this
Well,
program
exactly, if
for
I'm
your
paying for
personal
that service
line.
with taxes.
But
why
But
can't
again,
I
man,
tax
this
it?
is your personal line, right? It's your personal service. It's not the city's, this program they're doing. They went out and got funding for you as individuals to try to help bear that burden for you, is what they're trying to do to replace if you do have that line. Again, that's the best I can do. I mean, I think it's,
Moving on, does any,
Yeah, I got one more question. Sam, couldn't the city go around and everywhere there's a meter and actually check the private side, see if it's galvanized line or not, leading to the house?
In
from the
some,
meter?
in some of them you can tell, but some of them you can't because,
Probably take a look, sandpaper or whatever, you probably see if it's galvanized and you know, at least it's galvanized from the meter so far.
but some of them you can't tell unless you dig up on the outside of the meter pit.
Okay, I'm just saying, it's not an easy, quick way to,
And some of them were found that way,
okay,
but there's some of them you can't see on the homeowner side.
okay.
any quick questions? We're running a little bit behind. Is there any other last minute questions?
the water?
Yes.
How expensive is it just to replace a water tower,
To replace a water tower?
a water tower machine? Like,
Well, that's already being done right now. Right now, they're replacing, most of it's been completed, they're replacing a riser right now.
Right, but I mean, would it make more sense to just buy a brand new one instead of all the repairs to the old?
Well, this is already done. It's already done. Contract's already been initiated, the work's already started. Yep. Anyway, I'm a little behind, but I do want a couple things here before we move on. A lot of people ask about the streets, okay, and the condition of the streets, oil and chipping. There is a document up here. This is a listing of all the streets, all the intersections that are going to be repaired this year, this summer, and we're looking to do that in July, okay? So this list is up here. You can take it with you. Is there any questions about that before I move on? Yes.
It says they're gonna oil and chip.
Yes. And there's going to be milling. There's going to be milling.
Okay, that's what, if you don't mill, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
Because you gotta mill down the bumps, waves and dips.
We
If
get
you don't do it. And I was here at the city council meeting, I don't know, a month back.
Yep.
I complained about the one behind Reno's, behind the car dealership. Within 3 weeks, oil and chipped, right over the bumps and dips. It's unbelievable how stupid that was. Who made that decision?
I don't
Nobody
know,
held them accountable.
but we're moving on. We're moving on, okay?
But they're gonna use a miller.
It's, the list is right there, all the intersections are gonna be repaired, everything's gonna be oil and chip and mill, it's all there.
Doug, would I guess the newspaper or your, your website will actually show a schedule as dates?
So we will put that on our website when we're gonna start oil and chip program in July. And you have something, Tim?
Do we have time for Kevin from Miko to give
Yep,
quick
yep.
updates on oil chipping and the street projects we got going?
Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay. Some of that may be covered right here.
So Doug's already mentioned the list of roads that we're looking at for oil and chip and the intersection repairs. Those intersection repairs will primarily be, like we did last year with the hot mix rolled in basically around the radiuses to level those out, improve drainage around the inside of those curves on a lot of these intersections. The oil and chip, we do have milling included in our estimates. These will go into IDOT for IDOT approval next week. And then IDOT approves it. As soon as IDOT signs off on the expenditure of the MFT funds, then it will be advertised with the intention that this work will be done in mid to late July, when we've got those nice 98-degree days and the oil's good and hot and everything sticks to it. So that's the intention there. We're also working with IDOT on Shipman Road. So the first phase of Shipman Road from Highway 108 to Loveless Park, or to Loveless Parkway, to the intersection at Walmart. That's the first phase. That phase is anticipated to start construction. Right now, I'm saying early July. We're still working through the details with IDOT on exactly how quickly we can get that moving. We're looking at about a 90 to 120 day window for construction. So if we start early July, we're talking September, October for completion. This is moving at the speed of state government, unfortunately. We'd hoped to already have this bid and for them to be ready to start construction as soon as school got out, but it's been held up a little bit on the IDOT end. The next two phases of the Shipman Blacktop project are Loveless Parkway to MJM and then MJM to Renniker Road. I was actually just talking with Bobby today. IDOT has a new grant program that they just had a big webinar on today. Applications are due. They've got about $440 million worth of local project funds that we're going to apply for, about just shy of 1.1 million to go ahead and get Shipman Road Phase 2 and 3, get construction funds for that. We've got other funds identified for it, but if we can apply for these funds, that project is nearly shovel ready now. So if we can get those funds applied for, and basically it lets us shift the funds that we already have earmarked for phases 2 and 3. Tentatively, it lets the city shift those to other needs on the transportation side within the city. So those are really the three pieces that I had: Shipman Road Phase 1, Shipman Road Phase 2 and 3, and then the oil and chip and intersection repairs under MFT.
Is that just like repaving, or is there any?
It's a full depth reconstruction of Shipman Road. So they will come in and take up everything that's there. It will be completely milled up. They'll have to pull up the base rock, go all the way back down to nearly original dirt under the roadway. If necessary, there is lime stabilization of the subbase that's included in that, so it will firm up the subbase and then come back in with brand new base rock, new asphalt street. We're also going to bid it with a concrete alternate bid. So if by some chance concrete ends up being cheaper than asphalt, or if it's fairly close and we look at the total life cycle cost for the city, if it's cheaper over the next 50 years to spend an extra 5% now to put concrete in, then that the city will have that option. So we will have firm bids on both options there.
It's still of the same width, like there's no chance of widening it to get a turn lane into MJM, so I don't get rear-ended.
We have looked at the turn lane into MJM. We're working with IDOT on that right now. There was a traffic study done 2017 or 2018, that traffic study at that time did not recommend a turn lane in there, but we're working with IDOT based on the traffic patterns there now, and now that MJM is there and we can actually see, that was based on projections at that point. So we're working with IDOT right now. That's one of the things that we are looking at, is adding a turn lane and widening at MJM. The biggest issue is making sure we can do that within the right of way that we've got. If we have to acquire additional right of way, it gets really difficult with the railroad on the west side. There's no chance of getting any right of way there. So then it has to come off of the east side of the road there. And then that, kind of messes with everything that MJM has just built. So, but it is being considered right now. So we're working through that with IDOT.
I'm sorry, was there a projection on when that was gonna be done?
At this point, we don't have an estimated date on that. Part of that will depend on if we're successful in the grant application, those funds have to be spent in the next 2 years. So that would escalate that project pretty quickly. The city, we're already under contract on design on that, so that would cover, basically, we're just going after construction funds. So that would give us the funding for construction within the next 2 years.
So with the upcoming, I know school just got out, but with the upcoming school year, is that awful road gonna be patched, done something with?
There will be on the first phase will not be completed before school starts. So we will have to work with the schools and work with the city on how we're going to reroute traffic through that segment and work with the contractors to focus on getting, basically doing staged construction to make sure that we keep things as accessible as we possibly can when school's back in session.
Any question? Yeah.
Is there intention to have the Loveless Park gate open by the time this project starts?
That's another subject for another conversation. Sorry.
It could really just be our only option of how to get through there if we can't get through to the light.
Right now, just so you know, there's ongoing discussions in the contract and the MOU that is being established with the Park District for the whole thing. We're meeting I think next week with the Park Board to discuss how they want to approach that. But if that, in my thinking, this is me as mayor, my thought would be that we want to make sure we have as many access and egress routes as possible. So that's a discussion that will be had with the Park District Board to make sure that we have other options available to get around that.
Yeah, and if that option is not available, then we'll obviously we will work with the contractors to make sure that if they have to do construction in phases, to make sure that there is an accessible route to get through to the school by the time school starts. We will make sure that happens. It may be one lane and it may not be the most convenient, but there will be a route to the school.
But during that time, I would advocate that we leave that as an option. That would be, and again, this would have to be a council and a park different decision, but I don't think there would be a lot of resistance to that to try to alleviate that traffic pattern.
I just have a quick question. When they're redoing the 108 and Shipman Road thing, do you think there's any possibility they could synchronize with those stoplights? Because those things are horrible. Half the time you sit there and every single light is red, and you'll sit there with the red arrow and there's nobody in sight, but still the arrow's red, you can't make a left turn. And it's really ridiculous sometimes.
Think how much fuel was wasted there.
No kidding. Yeah, so, yeah.
Obviously, those are controlled by IDOT. We've relayed that to them.
Yeah, I understand that when IDOT does could you maybe give them a suggestion?
Yeah,
Look at that.
you're
light
more
while they
more
fix the
likely
road.
for that to happen when they do 108 than when we do Shipman Blacktop.
No.
That'll get done when they fix the trains going through at school time too, probably.
Any other questions about oil and chip? Yes.
It's never.
How do you get your street on this? And I know that these roads are already on here, but we built 2 new houses on Breckenridge, and the road goes like this, and it's a single road, and if you've got a lower car, you can't go down the middle of that road, and if there's 2 cars, you're in somebody else's yard. And my brother, who also lives there, said it hasn't been oiled or chipped for at least 10 to 15 years. And we talked last year, and she said, well, that's already planned out for this year, last year. And then I'm seeing this list, but I don't know when this list was made up and whose voice was put on here to get their road, but we haven't, ours is terrible. And you can't ride down the middle of the road depending on the car you're driving and needs some help. And we've talked to our aldermen before, the new ones were elected, and he said, yeah, this is really bad, it needs to be looked at, but that's as far as we got.
And and I'm not, before I speak, I don't know if there's room in this year's oil and chip program to look at any other concerns that may be, but the way this list was established is we had between MIGO and between our public works folks, they went out and looked at streets, determined by the condition of the streets and if there was issues with, bumps or that sort of thing, where they were ready to be milled and be straightened back out. So all these streets were gathered, they were prioritized based on traffic, the amount of traffic that we get, the issues that they seen, the visual issues that they seen with the roads itself. Some roads that had not been addressed in a maintenance program the last 5 years were prioritized on this list. So that's where those streets came from. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tim, anything else you want to add to that if I spoke out of term?
Did pretty good.
Okay.
So how do we get our address on this for next year then?
So if you tell me you quick the street again.
Breckenridge,
Breckenridge.
West Breckenridge.
And that's something we'll look at in the future. Is there a certain block that's in?
200, 300. Right off the railroad tracks.
Okay. Anybody else? I'm getting a little behind here. Anything else you want to say?
Nope, that's all I
Okay.
have. Thank you.
I'm gonna move on to, bring Derek Graham up to talk about some public safety issues, talk about our new, nuisance ordinance, code enforcement, and some other issues that he wants to bring, before the folks tonight. So Derek, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Yep, I'm Derek Graham, I'm the chief of Carlinville. I want to thank Mayor Downey for giving me the opportunity to speak at the state of the city presentation. First and foremost, residents want to feel safe in their community, which I'm tasked with. I've been with the police department for over 20 years, and I'm going to my third year as chief. I want to thank my entire department for the good work they do, as it takes a devoted team to address all the issues that we encounter daily. On the agenda was some of the pertinent topics that were asked about. Start out with the nuisance properties and code violations, how we work with things. As we get complaints or proactivity or how we get a complaint of a property, we go in and we serve a warning violation. So it's a copy we give to the residents, tell them what violation they have, and on the violation states the code and how many days they have to clean it up. So after we give that, we go back, check the properties. We do work with people because there is some type of resources that people can't move vehicles, get grass cut. So we do work with them as long as they communicate with us. If they don't fix the violation, then we cite them, a citation. So there's a court date on the citation to whereas they can go to court and either plead guilty or not guilty. We don't have a lot of compliance on people showing up. They normally take the guilty plea, which then gets us to a point which we just started in probably the last 8 to 9 months of getting cleanup orders on properties. So the judge at that time will either grant us or not grant us a cleanup order. Once that's granted, then we step into a 28-day window where we give the homeowner another 28 days to fix it. Normally when we get close to 28 days, 4 to 5 time periods, I try and locate them again and give them another warning that after the 28 days, we'll be going to council to get a cleanup order. In the cleanup order, if the council so chooses to do it, there's bids and everything else that's going to cost the city to clean up the property. After they clean up the property, then we set up, then we go in and we put a lien on the property. So kind of the whole system of how it all works, turnkey, the timelines that it takes to do this. After we do that, and we've had this problem since we started this, somebody throws more debris out, then we have to start it all over again. We are looking into the ordinances in the last month or so of potentially just when we write that one warning, it potentially could just last 12 months. So if a person gets it fixed and either doesn't mow the grass, brings in another vehicle, does the same violation, that we will actually just keep citing them and trying to get kind of compliance on that route. Our biggest problem that we ran into with all the city ordinances, and we've tried to figure all that out, is a little bit of teeth to an ordinance. So on our thing of our main job that we do when we arrest people, there is a consequence to it. There's either jail, something that goes against your record, you lose your driver's license, those are things that happen. With ordinances, pretty much isn't. So there's a fine that gets slapped on a person. If they can't afford to mow their grass, then they can't afford to pay the fine. So we're kind of hung up in that window right now. We're looking at other alternative means to it. We've looked into the potential habitual offender of bringing them to court, making them show up for court, and if they don't, then we'll get a warrant for their arrest. As everybody here knows, with the new laws and everything else that's hard on us, arresting people in general kind of hinders us a little bit. But I feel like there's a way that we can go that can kind of put some teeth. If somebody's going to get arrested, then maybe they'll pay their fine or try and avoid it. So that's kind of the way we're trying to travel. Another thing to all the ordinance side of it is we're working on, and we've talked about it multiple times, and there's conversation of it now, of an actual code enforcement officer. Somebody that's actually a police officer that's assigned to just city code violations. So they would take over everything, all the ordinances, zoning. We've had some sewer issues that a police officer is basically just assigned to that and trying to handle it. There's a lot of follow-up. Anybody can probably drive around and find some type of ordinance violation. This officer would be assigned to doing that. So on the other side of it, I've been in more arguments with people trying to tell people to mow their grass than I have been in arresting people for theft or something. Trust me, I've been in more arguments over that than there has been anything. So that's why we're looking to the officer side, because we want that, person to be able to have a little bit of, authority when they step in to do that.
And I want to interject something here. Right now, the way it works is if there is a code violation or some type of nuisance violation, our officers are the ones, our current officers are the ones that would have to go out and issue those citations and talk to the property owners. Well, that takes a lot of time. Out of their investigatory duties, the other calls or issues that we have throughout the town. So there's not one person that consistently does this. So again, we've been talking, our next step is probably going to be to hire a code enforcement officer. That's their only job, is to go out, look at find these properties, take the calls about these properties, and issue citations and follow up with them through the court system.
How soon is that gonna happen? We need it now.
Yeah, I know.
I turned in the neighbor 3 times last year.
Mhm.
Nothing was ever done. I'm not saying you didn't try.
Yeah.
But,
My goal is to have someone by August.
yeah, because
That's
I've
my-
already talked to the neighbor
Mhm.
and asked him if he was going to clean up his property, because it's horrendous. It's not his priority.
Yeah.
That's
And
what he told me.
And that's why it's a priority for us to get someone who's designated to do this.
Are
Good
you
question.
voting in?
What's that?
Are you voting someone in? Or are you just trying to elect someone in?
No, it's someone that would be hired, it'll be a police officer, an additional police officer that has the ability to.
Yeah, I say go for
I'm sorry, we had a question here.
What do you do with abandoned buildings, houses and that type of thing? I live on a street that has a house
He's gonna talk about it next.
Yeah, we'll address that here in just a little bit.
that I have
Oh,
a,
you want to call people? You go ahead and call them.
anyway, that house, I was told 7 years ago that it was gonna be torn down. And I think it's been at least 7 years, if not more. And it's getting more run down. There's rodents all over that area and that. And at one time, we had homeless people living in there and that 3 years ago and that, because at least it was a shelter when it was snowing or whatever. So what do we do? Because there's nobody actually living in that house. I've even went to the courthouse to talk about it, and then they told me they had to get a hold of the homeowners and this and that, and then they never got anything. Then at one time, they said that they were going to be torn down, like I said, 7 years ago, and it's still not torn down. And you probably know what house I'm talking about.
So we do have a list of houses that we've rated from, and we actually have got it in the budget this year for trying to move forward, because we've been able to get grants to actually do some demo on some places. The problem that we ran into is those grants only last a year. So when we get the green light to do a grant, the problem is that we have to acquire the property, we have to pay the taxes. It has to go through such a long system that it could go over a year. So what we have put in the budget this year is demolition, so that we can start those projects now, trying to acquire those properties. So whenever a grant does come along, that we're already in the motion to where we can use it. So, and we are working on that. We've actually we're getting ready to do a few houses.
You know which one I'm talking about now.
No, yeah, there's a couple.
But I can recommend, I can say on a great thing on that this year, and it happened last year. The city did take initiative to try to keep the grass mowed down for us and that type of thing. You know what I'm saying? If they see it was there, then they cut the grass. But still,
Yeah, I have a kind of quick question, kind of a long-term concern. I just got back from a place where this seems so quiet now, but it's getting irritating to me again in 2 months. I know it's an individual thing, but there's people with modified pipes that I've got a house built in the 50, comes right through. And I think there's a little problem with the intersection with Illinois IEP and local ordinance, but it's like, it's so obvious. You can throw a basketball in some of these pipes, and then also diesel fumes are rolling out of it. And I really like the idea of having, somebody, enforcement officer, a code officer, but then looking at, and you brought that up, looking at the problems, and then how the law and rules of the city could give you the teeth to go, well, you can't have a pipe this big, in the city, or you can't have a certain decibel noise. And because I think this current code is pretty generic, it's like, it should be more specific and just like boom, 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 here's the fine.
Yeah, so on the state side of it, which is what you're talking about,
Yes.
so the city can be a little bit more enforceable with it, but the problem is with no teeth to it, that's what we're working on. We're trying to get to a point where there's a little bit of teeth to an ordinance.
Yeah, I don't understand why this city council hasn't done some of the things that, I follow Benel and Vallisky city councils. They're both really aggressive about derelict houses and derelict property. And if an alderman sees a property that needs to be addressed, or if a citizen complains about it, they'll take formal action in the council to declare that property a public nuisance. And supposedly that sets the stage that they can go to court later if they need to. If the person goes ahead and cleans it up and takes care of it, no foul, no harm. And, all the city's out is basically nothing. If it continues to go on, they will eventually go to court like you're talking about. And if it goes too far, court will award the property to the city. So the beauty of it is you can go in and tear down whatever's there and then offer it for sale and set a minimum price that recoups your legal fees and whatever costs you have in it to tear it down. So it's almost like it costs the city nothing.
Well, so I think to answer your question on that is, I think that we're moving in the direction of, we never had a budget line to be able to do any type of demolition. So I think previous councils and previous thinking on it is, the city doesn't want to take on that debt, of having to put all that money out, having to tear down the house. I mean, they could have $20,000, $30,000 in a demo. They could run into asbestos and have to, so I think they were trying to avoid some of that, thinking maybe it'll work itself out. So, I think we're getting to a point where we're moving forward with it. We're putting it in the budget. We're going to look for those grants to be able to tear houses down. I think we're going.
If you can spend the money up front, you'll get it back.
Yeah.
But,
And just so you know, the city did purchase a home last council meeting, and we were actually purchasing another home, or in the works of purchasing another home to demolish them.
But should you have to purchase it? I think what you're saying is they don't purchase those. They don't purchase those.
That's how, we'll purchase it, tear it down, and sell it and recoup our costs.
Yeah.
Well, the property we just acquired was given to us. So it was just given to us. So as back taxes, so what we have ran into is back taxes. We've been waiting for them to get bought out. Well, if somebody buys the taxes mid-tax term, out of the 3 years, on the second year, somebody buys them and goes back and says, oh, I don't want it, and returns it, it restarts the timer on the house. So we've got a few houses that have been restarting on year 2 for like 14 years. So
It's more years.
I'm one of the ones that lives next door to one of these houses.
Okay.
and I'm to the point where I'm ready to burn the thing down myself.
We didn't hear that.
Well,
This is being recorded too.
I have had a quadruple bypass in the 2 years that this has all been going on. I'm not allowed to go out of my house because I can't breathe when they're burning stuff they shouldn't be burning outside. I've had my daughter and a couple of kids that have been attacked by the dog next door because it's allowed to run loose.